luckily, I have to say, we were always able to really over-exceed expectations. And, you know, for most people, when they go to the board of management, talking to the CFO is not such a nice experience. For me, it always has been. And I always went out of the board of management, not like with, you know, that's what you need to do, always with the point of, you know what, you should hire more people and to make it even bigger. So that's how we made it successful. And it is really, I would say, trust into the technology, really believe what it can do, and don't start too small when you start. If you do it for reals.
Do it for reals.
Yeah.
I like that. It's sort of like the concept of I mean, as you stated, it's if you start small, it may stay small, but it seems like you really plan for scale from the get-go. Arjen, it sounded like you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, I wanted to add something like that because Sebastian said it in his introduction in the answer to your question. We see that doing something in the primary process, in the business, and not doing it in a staff department like finance or HR or procurement is where people will really realize the value, because that's where the volume is. And I think that one of the gutsy things Deutsche Telekom did is that they did what most companies don't dare to do, is do it in the client-facing areas and really drive this client expectation. And don't do it as a testing ground in HR, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, that's not where the big numbers are. It was a really gutsy, but in the end, I think it has proven to be a really successful decision from Deutsche Telekom to actually do this at the front line.
Yeah, it's a great point, Arjen, and particularly notable because of, I mean, the time frame when you were doing this in Sebastian. I mean, we still say of all the different data that HFS creates and collects, finance and accounting, to your point, Arjen, sort of the back office focus, is still the biggest area for RPA automation. We're seeing it spread and expand, but it's really only been perhaps in the last 12 to 18 months that we're seeing a greater push to more of these core customer-focused functions. So I think it's a really great point. I know in some of my conversations with you, Sebastian and Arjen, we talked a lot about the technology and setting up a great program, that thinking big mentality. But we know that there's some other elements that need to come into play when you're thinking about growing big. I sort of not being a millennial and been doing this for quite a while, I always think back to just one of the really core truths or elements that are really true in the marketplace, which is you always need that combo of people, process, and technology to be effective. But I know in our talking about that, it's you set up a program, you found a great partner, you focused on something that mattered. But I'd love if maybe you could take a couple of moments and talk about some of the other things that came into play. Culture, for example, and some of the change management that goes with changing the hearts and minds of people, convincing the organization, not just your leadership, that automation is valuable. How did you do that? What are some of these tiles? What do these mean? And how did you execute on this?
Well, first I have to say convincing the leadership was actually very important as well, because at least at Deutsche Telekom, and I suppose that's true for a lot of big companies, the top management is rather risk averse. So they're really not so keen on trying out new things. And so in that sense, aside from what I just mentioned before, having a good team of people who would really, drive automation, it was, I think, really essential that our top management team got, I would say, an incentive to really start investigating the potential of automation. And in that sense, I think it was really important that our CFO did, aside from giving us money to build a team, he also put out targets for automation. He said, like, you know what, you have a new tool now, you have a new team now, and you can work with it or not. It's your choice, but I'm going to give you a target anyhow. And so that really opened a lot of doors. Because I remember before that happened, when we, were talking to department heads about the idea of automation and the idea that they might have potential to do so, what they would constantly tell us is, in our department, certainly not. The things we are doing are way too complex. Maybe next door you might get lucky, but with us, not so much. So that was, what happened at the beginning quite a lot. And having those targets put out really opened a lot of doors because they were really sort of forced to work with us. And so that was, in terms of, top down, a really important factor. And at the same time, the whole bottom up thing was, of course, very important as well. And I would have to add that, in the very beginning, we underestimated it a lot. So because it was really important to show people that they wouldn't lose their jobs if they helped us to automate, to really show them, our idea of automation is not so much to get rid of you, our idea really is to get rid of the work you don't like at all. So we really showed people that we would help them, to give them the freedom and the ability to focus on the things they like instead of the things that really annoyed them. So that was a very important thing in terms of bottom up. And the other thing that was actually important, and you wouldn't think about it in the beginning, was infrastructure. People really had a hard time believing that those bots actually would work reliable. And they said, like, I'm responsible for the business, and what if the bots don't work? What are you going to do now? What are you going to do then? So it was really important to us to build up a very professional infrastructure that would be redundant, and to tell people those bots won't fail. They will just keep working. Don't worry about it. We promise you. And we're going to also show you how and why you can trust us. And the other thing that was really important here was to really build up a professional run team in the very beginning. Because we really made sure every time a bot would fail or not work, we would proactively fix the problem. Let those people in the operations department know, you know what, we had a problem, but it's fixed already, so don't worry. So it was very important in building trust that those bots would actually fulfill their promise and live up to what we said. So that was, really key in terms of being successful. And the other thing we really noticed is, if we really want to do automation, we need operations people. We really need the guys in the call centers and in our field force that really know what they do. Not so much process descriptions, but really what's actually happening. And this was a big question for us, was how can we get those people to work with us? And aside from, showing them that instead of taking their jobs, we're going to take the work you don't like away, we also decided to really create career opportunities. The idea really was to we created two programs actually. One is called Expert Track, Analyst Track, and the other one is called Developer Track. And we really started to tell people, you know what, if you think and if you're up to it, you can become a programmer, you can become an analyst, you can have a career, even so you're just a call center agent at the moment. And that really got people motivated to work with us and to really see opportunity in the whole automation program. So that was also, I think, a very important element in our whole, I would call it change story, if you want to say so.
Indeed. I mean, I think a variety of important points. I mean, really going back to your point about planning for scale, but it's again, sort of an old adage, but you have to make sure that you're really addressing the people, the process, and the technology and planning for scale. Arjen, sounds like you've got another point to add in.
Yeah, I mean, we are of course now also for some years in this game, and we see that actually what Deutsche Telekom is doing is now fast becoming the best practice. And one of the points I think Sebastian, in some kind of modesty, didn't mention, but it's vital to have the people that lead this robotic program to actually understand what operational management is all about. Because if you're working in a customer care environment, you really need to understand that every second you're not on means that you're disappointing clients. It means that you need to understand that you need to be able to prioritize fast which tasks need to be done first. It is really about understanding that your people are your key asset. And I think that we now see that with more of our clients, but I think that Deutsche Telekom, and especially Sebastian and his team, have really done groundbreaking work. And now we actually see that within Deutsche Telekom, the biggest suggestion engine for processes to automate are the employees themselves. So it becomes kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which will speed up your transformation and your automation journey significantly if you can harness the collective intelligence of your workforce. And that we really believe that Deutsche has done this tremendously well, and it's one of the pivotal parts in the success they have enjoyed.
Arjen, another great add to the conversation, I think, it's that piece of, because we see it, I mean, we've heard that automation anxiety is actually being diagnosed as a real condition where people are scared that robots are going to take their jobs. So to be able to flip that and really, because again, we all know this empirically, that the folks who understand the processes and how the work gets done the best are the ones doing the work. So to have them contribute to the equation is really massively critical. So let's move on now to talk about, so where have you gotten to? So again, 4+ years working together, really on core business processes, customer focused in the customer service space, both contact center as well as field service. Sebastian, I'd love for you to roll this up. What have you been able to achieve over this time thus far? And I'll draw everyone's attention to, there's some pretty interesting sizable numbers at the bottom of this screen that we're going to decompose a little bit. But let's have you at least take a shot at answering that first. Really, what have you achieved thus far, Sebastian?
Well, yeah. But first, let me say what Arjen was saying about the self-fulfilling prophecies has been very true for us. When I was, giving an estimation, I was sure after a year we would run out of ideas, probably 1.5 years. And interestingly enough, that hasn't happened yet. Still, people would come to me like every day and be like, you know what? I noticed you have automated this, and if this works, that should also work. So let's, set up a project. So that has been very interesting in the past. And that's something you can also see in the numbers we have right now, or not right now, that's how we ended last year. We managed to have 35 million transactions processed by our bot farm. 35 million transactions, well, what does a transaction mean? A transaction could be something between 1 minute to 45 minutes. So a transaction could be a very easy task, but it could also be a very complex process that we have modeled into our RPA bots. And what is interesting here is that we were almost able to double the amount between 2017 and 2018. So in considering that we were coming from a quite big number already, I thought, and I still think that's quite a success. So I can say we are rather happy with the whole program still. And the lucky thing for us is we still see a lot of potential, because we still believe there's a lot of stuff we haven't tapped in. And given all these new technologies that are emerging at the moment, which is, process mining, AI-based tools that would help to augment our bots, we still see even more potential than we have tackled yet. So I would say pretty happy at the moment. And to give you an idea of what we have been doing, I want to really refer to some use cases. That's the first one you see, wholesale problem solving, is actually the first use case. The first one we did this on a Monday. And we started, I would say, small, with a small process that's the equivalent of like 3, 4, 5 FTE. But we constantly worked our way up, and now we really managed to get 70% of the workforce out of that process, which is really good for us, because instead of doing ticket-based work, all these people are now in our call business and really deal with real customer issues. So you can really see tremendous SLA improvements. Employees are happy because they really didn't like that ticket-based work. Our customers are happy, and everyone is happy. Another thing I would actually love to refer to is I would call it automatic email processing case, which is really the combination of AI and RPA. And what we just do here is we use bots to really feed an AI engine with emails, and we use the bots to really do what the AI engine tells the bot. So the AI tool will let us know what the customer wants, and the bots will do the job. And if I imagine if we had done that with classic IT integration, it would probably have taken us a year or two to integrate it. With RPA, it was a 3-month project. And the last example I would like to give on this chart is called Trassendefender, which is probably not a self-explanatory name. But what I really like about this idea is that something really came from the people, from our people on the street. Because sometimes, well, not sometimes, actually quite often, it happens that construction firms damage our infrastructure. Now you have to imagine those construction firms usually employ people who don't speak German, but a lot of times some Eastern European languages. But in any case, they have a really hard time talking to our call center people, letting us know that they actually damage our infrastructure. So, our people came up to us and like, it would be good to have an app that's multi-language. It would allow those guys to let us know that they have actually done something to our infrastructure. How can we accomplish this? And then again, it was another design thinking based approach, a 2-month project to really create that app. And another good thing here is everyone likes it. The companies out like it, our people like it, and everyone is happy. And RPA really was a lever here to do it quickly and, to have that time you need between idea and realization limited to just a few months instead of years or even worse.